We are back on Morningline, our final segment with Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall. Always good to have him on, and we can take some calls from you if you'd like. We've got some lines open. We've got next up for you is Ronnie. Good morning, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Hey, Ronnie, go ahead.
Yeah, they got so many stuff for felonies and stuff that somebody could do. I believe it's only, if you just make it murder for a felony or something like that, there would be less people in jail.
Meaning that you don't have so many crimes so serious as felonies, you mean?
Right.
Yeah. Well, murder, yeah. Murder's a felony, but there are some other pretty serious felonies that I'm glad they're felonies, because the whole nature of, now, just to let people know, if it's a misdemeanor, you're likely facing a lighter penalty than you would for a felony. The more serious the crime.
Right. Yeah, a misdemeanor can only be 11 months, 29 days, so you cannot serve over a year of a sentence, basically. That's
are there crimes in your mind that are felonies that maybe shouldn't be?
Yes.
Okay, like?
Yeah, I've always struggled with the drug crimes. Now again, I'm all for selling all that. Obviously, there's a lot.
Yeah, if you're a big dealer,
right,
crack down. Yeah.
But I've always struggled with, there's a lot of research about this, but cocaine was disproportionately sentenced. Powder cocaine received much less of a criminal conviction
than crack.
And the reality is, it's cocaine, and it's $20. You can sell it on any street corner, and poor people were victimized, to be honest, because they went to prison for this, when rich people usually use powder
some
cocaine.
white collar stock trader gets busted with it. He's not going to prison. And
there's disproportionate issues with drugs to me, the way that the sentencing laws work. I'm controversial, I know, but I'm against prostitution as being a crime. I don't think it should be, for a lot of reasons. It's not worth. I've told people this in our own state. If you're arrested we had a law passed 10 years ago. If you're arrested in the act of prostitution within a mile of a church or a school, it's an automatic 7 days in jail. Well, that's good. That's actually a better step than it used to be, where you just get arrested over and over again. But by the way, there's no space in Nashville further away than a mile of a church or a school, so it covers pretty much the whole city.
That's right.
But the reality is, if you want to do something about, typically a woman, is not in the act of prostitution to make a living. It's not, and this person is not making a reasonable decision to do what's going on, male and female, but primarily the female. And so we need to do something about what that is. And to me, there's a lot of argument that it's a victim crime. I don't believe that. There's some presidential candidates that are talking about that if there are sex crimes that are consensual adults, that they don't believe it should be criminalized. The reason is, for me, it's, if you want to deal with prostitution, I can break down what's going on. There's a lot of drug issues, there's abuse issues. It's not
human trafficking.
Right. And you got to deal with what's and I think we've got to be careful. Like I said before, I think we have laws on the books that to me don't do anything to improve our community. I really don't think they do. 7 days for a person in prostitution isn't long enough to get the needle out of their arm. They're off the streets, they're shooting heroin every day. You arrest them, 7 days later, you haven't done one thing.
Do you have a lot of prostitutes and Johns in the jail?
Yeah, it comes through the system, and human trafficking, which I think is a buzzword. I'm all against what the word trafficking is, but the whole episode with Kraft down in Florida is a good example that we all jump and use that term. We don't really understand.
That's right.
It's kind of like the word bullying.
I was going to bring that up, because initially they were saying, because in my mind, that's a very serious part of the prostitution problem, of human trafficking, women forced into this, and however that goes. And they're finding that it doesn't appear to be human trafficking related to what prostitution, yes, or whatever services perhaps, but not, and there's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful, because it's like to use hate crime, the word hate crime. It's important, but everything's not a hate crime, and you have to be careful. So it's not always human trafficking when there's the act of prostitution. In the old days, you would call it a pimp, who is really trafficking a person, but they may have been from here. And that pimp hardly was ever caught. Right.
So if you had your druthers with regard to prostitution and decriminalizing it, it's not that you're condoning it, what would you do?
Yeah, I would take the crime out of it first, right? And so the individual who is in the act of prostitution, who needs help for her many conditions, disorder of mental health and abuse and addictions and all that, that needs to be provided for her or him without having to go through court and fines and punishment and all the stuff that's a waste of money if you don't deal with what really is causing her to do that. Most people think that people that are addicted do it because they want to. Just quit. Why don't they quit using heroin? Just stop. That's going to hurt them. Well, same thing with a prostitute. Why don't she just leave the streets? Well, a whole bunch of reasons. But arresting her, I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm saying arresting her doesn't do anything to stop it. It doesn't. People think, well, she's off the streets. Yeah, but you haven't dealt with what led her to the streets. And so if you don't want to deal with that, and all you want to do is, to me, criminalize it to feel good, like you're doing something about it. You're not. Taking the naked man out of the airport didn't solve his problem
What
at all.
about the Johns then? How do you deal? You talked about the prostitutes themselves. What about their customers?
Yeah, I don't think it should be a crime at all. And when I say that, I'm not excusing the fact if it's trafficking, it's a different situation. I'm talking about a prostitute or in escorts and all these things that go on. I mean, the reality of it is those people in a lot of those situations have consented to do that. If you're forcing it, put them in prison. I'm all for it's a crime to force anyone to do anything. But I don't agree. I don't believe it's a crime. It should be a crime for people to engage in that, and our criminal justice system thinks it's going to solve it. It's ridiculous. I mean, the needs of the person who is on the streets is so many that you can't deal with that in a 7-day sentence. I mean, our legislature got up and kicked and screamed that we're going to make prostitution a more serious crime. We're going to put 7 days in jail. If you want to do something about her, put her in there for 7 months. Not because of punishment, but what is really going on with her is many, many, many months and years of abuse and addiction and everything else. But you're pretending that you're doing something about it. So what do? We waste police time, courts time, jail time, your money, my money. Why are we doing that? What do you really want to accomplish? Do you really feel good that you punished her?
Is it 7 days right now?
7 days, yeah.
And it's costing taxpayers millions of dollars.
Right.
To
I mean, you haven't accomplished anything. Police time, court time, jail time, and what have you done for her in 7 days? We get the needle out of her arm and clean it up and send her on her way.
They're back at it again.
Right.
All right, let's go next to, I believe we've got Tony. Tony, good morning. Hi, Tony.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
You had a discussion the other day about the getting sued for being open at night. Now, the Metro Council a couple of years ago tried to pass an ordinance to stop, to have these late night businesses open, to shut down their provide security or whatever, and it failed. Now you see it caught up with us that they didn't provide enough security and stuff like that for private. They got so many private security companies here in town that could actually help people like Waffle House out, but they don't want to pay for it.
Interesting. I mean, interesting you brought that up. We broke the story last week that a lawsuit's been filed against Waffle House now by one of the victims in the shooting there, and it's stemming from the argument that Waffle House is open 24/7, and that they perhaps should have known that they are in an area that perhaps could bring some unsavory characters in, and so they have a responsibility to protect their customers. There were some other issues that brought up. I don't know if there's a good legal standing there, but if that were to move forward, that would influence and be a factor for every single business, especially those that are open 24/7, that they be required to provide security. And you can't say Waffle House had any way of knowing Travis Ranking was going to do what he did. I don't know how you can blame them for that. But should they have known that maybe because they're open 24/7, you never know who's going to walk in?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be reasonable about it. I mean, just because you're open 24 hours a day doesn't mean that you're a more likely.
Oh, it can happen in any restaurant, anywhere,
Right.
any time of day. Yeah,
I mean, I agree that there are places that are open, that are, I think Tony was talking about even nightclubs and so forth.
Well, those nuisance
hours.
ones that have been shut down.
Right.
Yeah.
But I find it a little strange to say that we should require a restaurant or should have known that this could happen. I would, if there had been a pattern of fights and injuries and things going on, I could see where you should have, as an environment of Waffle House or whatever, known that this continued. You didn't do anything to resolve it. I don't know that that's the case.
This is a relatively new restaurant. I don't believe
Right.
there was.
And so and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I sit and try to go, well, wait a minute, let's be fair about it. Does that mean everything that's open past midnight must have a security presence? If they do, then you and I are going to pay a lot more money for everything we do. And Tony is partly right. There is security businesses. A lot of those aren't in the best conditions either. Finding people to work security isn't easy anymore. Trust me, we do it every day. So the quality of people you would get, the effort to get it done, the cost to do it, it's embarrassing that we're living in a country that we have to have a security person in every classroom, every school, every restaurant, everywhere we go, every church.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, we can't overdo that. You cannot have an individual security guard going with you wherever you want to go. So
that's why more people are packing heat.
yeah, it's just.
I don't know. All right, let's take one more call, Sheriff. Let's go to Raymond. Raymond, good morning. Hi, Raymond.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the sheriff if he don't think that it looks like to me he's for trying to solve the problem and help the people that's been put in jail and stuff. And I think the main problem is, and I wonder if he don't think the same thing, the judges and the lawyers are more after the money than they are to help the people. They want all they can get out of them. They delay the trials, they drag them out, they keep them in jail for years and crowd the jails up with people that don't need to be in there, that's sitting waiting for a trial.
2 minutes.
I don't disagree with Raymond on a lot of that. I mean, I'm not saying the judges are bad people or lawyers are bad people, but the system does that. I mean, the system is that way. And like we said a minute ago, if you feel good about yourself because you've arrested someone in the act of prostitution, good for you. I don't feel good at all about that. If you feel good for arresting a naked man in the airport, good for you. I don't feel good about that at all. And I have kids in this community, my sons, and I want both of them to live here. I want to be safe. I believe people should be held accountable. I'm not arguing ignore behavior. But when you're criminalizing things that oftentimes are either disease-ridden, which is most of these, or medical conditions, and then feeling good about it, and building jails and courtrooms and hiring more police officers. I mean, I say this everywhere I go. I have a $100 million budget. Police department has nearly twice that. Courts have a lot of money. Go in here, someone lead the city, the state, and say, we're taking money away from you. But take the problem too. Take the mental health case. Take the prostitution and addictions issue. But take the money and go reinvest that into what it really is. It's not a crime to be ill. And everyone who is addicted, it's a disease. It doesn't mean they get to keep doing it. My point is not, if you've ever seen someone come off of heroin, there is nothing worse to watch. This isn't pretty. It isn't, just put that, snack or chips down. No, it's your body and you will die.
Screaming for it, withdrawal.
Right. It is a terrible thing to watch. It's hard to do. It's a complex problem. But to arrest a person and think you've done that is irresponsible. And I think people in my job, I've always said there's two pieces of law enforcement: arrest the person, arrest the problem. However you want to do it. But to me, the problem is where, if you want a safer community, you got to focus, because arresting the person, they're all going home. 99% of them are going home at some point. And when they're getting ready to go home, if you then start thinking about, we haven't done anything. Once the arrest occurs, we should all say, let's fix the problem. And it's sometimes complex, and sometimes it's decriminalizing things, taking it out of the system. So maybe if we took mental health out and we took addiction out and we took maybe the people who are left in what you and I would call the jail system, which is how it was originally designed, we could do something intense with that, which is very difficult.
Arrest the problem.
That's what we want to do.
You've been preaching it, and I'm buying what you're selling. I mean, more people need to take that approach, because that's the only way you solve the problems, and you're absolutely right. You do a great job.
Well,
thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. We'll see you in a month, all right?
Yep.
Be back with a programming note about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us.